Nash for putting this bill through. Well done.
Madam Speaker.
I call Tamati Coffey.
Madam Speaker, I'm happy to take a call on this particular bill, the old Taxation, Neutralising, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Bill. This wee bit of light reading right here. Happy and also sad too. Sad because I look up to the gallery and I see some of our members of the public, young people, sitting there wondering, what the heck is going on down here? What are they talking about? And I feel for you as I look up there and I think to myself, you've been sitting there patiently now for nearly an hour and a bit trying to wrap your head around what this bill is all about. So my kōrero today is directed to you, to try and help you to understand what it is that we're talking about down here. I too am a simple Māori boy from the Bay of Plenty, so when I got presented with this Taxation, Neutralising, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Bill, I was a little bit daunted by the fact. You see, because it hasn't actually come from us, and if you haven't heard it already 100 times from the other side of the House, they're the ones that came up with this. But, you see, the thing is, they had 9 years to actually do this, to get this bill through the House. They had 9 long years to do it, and what they did was that they kind of introduced this bill in its dying days, which is why we're standing here right now doing the first reading of this particular bill. They could have done it sooner, but they chose not to, and, you know, I don't want to speculate as to why they dragged their feet so much on it. It isn't an easy bill to get your head around. You see, if you're not a financial advisor, if you're not an expert in taxation, you probably won't get it that easily. But all you need to know is that we're down here perusing it, looking through it, grafting over it, trying to get to the bottom of it. And at the end of the day, this is a bill that is about fairness, as some of the other speakers have talked about. You see, it's about fairness because we have this taxation system in New Zealand, and it really racks people up when some people are paying tax and some people aren't. You see, it's kind of the contract that we enter into. There are two certain things they say in this world, and it's that those two certain things, one is death, the other is tax. And you see, when young people that I speak to get their first job and they see the amount of tax that they have to pay, they first of all see the amount that they get, then they see a little chunk taken out of tax. They say, hey, that's kind of the deal. We all pay tax, you know. And it really racks people up when they hear about stories where there's big companies that are earning lots and lots and lots of money that aren't actually paying any tax. Well, when I say not much tax, they're paying tax, but it's a tiny bit of tax. Figure this one out. In 2014, Facebook paid $43,000 in tax. There are plenty of small businesses all around the country, small, medium businesses that pay way over that, all right? Google paid $233,000 worth of tax. It really racks people up. You see, Madam Speaker, I'm a small business owner in provincial New Zealand. It's really, really hard. What we do every week is that we take our balance sheet, we enter in the totals that we've made for that week, we take out our expenses, we also take out our tax as well. And, well, you know, when you start aggregating that and you have a look at your annual report at the end of the year, you notice just how much tax you actually have paid. And so when you compare the amount of tax that we pay as a small business in provincial New Zealand, where times are really tough, and we think that we're doing an honest service for people in our community by providing jobs, by providing a service, it grates on me that companies like Facebook have paid $43,000.
Point of order, Barbara Kuriger.
Madam Chair, I think it's in line with this House. We actually speak to the House, and the current Speaker is actually spending most of his time speaking to the gallery.
I would have to agree with that.
That's
Please,
okay.
if you would direct your debate to the House.
To you, to Madam Speaker. I will do that. The whole House. There we go. As a small business owner, as I was saying, in provincial New Zealand, it really gets on my goat that companies like Facebook pay $43,000 in tax every year, and we, as a small business, we pay quite a bit. We pay quite a bit, and so it's unfair. And so what we want to do is try and balance things out. And when I say that I'm a simple boy from the Bay of Plenty, I had no idea that there were all of these measures that companies, big multinationals, were embarking on, that they were doing, which was allowing them to get off scot-free. Now, in an article that was published by Stuff on March the 2nd, 2017, it's such a highbrow conversation, this, that actually they had to, at the bottom of their article, put in jargon. They had to translate exactly what it was that they were talking about. And there's 4 things that this bill purports to do, that this bill will change in terms of making sure that multinationals pay their fair share. One of it is transfer pricing. Now, I'll spell that out just a little bit. According to their definition, it refers to the prices multinationals set when they charge their local subsidiaries for centrally provided services such as accounting and marketing. Multinationals can divert money to lower tax jurisdictions by overcharging for such services. There's also this other thing that they use, big multinationals, permanent establishment. And according to this particular definition, it says that they are rules which determine whether a company has a taxable presence in a country. The changes may make it harder for foreign firms to claim that they don't have a permanent presence in New Zealand if they use intermediaries to enter into contracts here on their behalf. A little bit to wrap your head around. Hybrid mismatches relates to rorts such as the double Irish that involve companies exploiting differences between countries' tax laws, often differences in semantics, to avoid a profit being taxed in either country. And the final one to wrap your head around is around interest deductions, which can be used to channel profits from New Zealand subsidiaries to multinational parents. Unnecessarily large loans or loans at artificially high interest rates can mean that cash is unfairly transferred through untaxed interest payments rather than through dividends on locally taxed profits. Now, these are all of the things that the previous government went through in terms of trying to figure out how we were going to approach this issue of multinationals paying their fair share. But there were a few questions that arose out of this. There was a fear that maybe if we entered into this arrangement, if we made multinationals pay their fair share, then maybe what it would do is discourage them from investing or doing business here in New Zealand. Now, don't get me wrong, I quite like my Apple iPhone. I quite like Google. I use it probably every day, and I'd be pretty miffed if they decided to walk. But it was decided that actually that firms that operate here, that we need to stick true to our values and actually ensure that a fair amount is paid in terms of tax. Multinationals should not be allowed to achieve a competitive advantage over other businesses by exploiting loopholes in our tax system. Now that, to me, as I said, as a small business owner, we're always looking for an even playing field, making sure that everybody is on the same level. And when you think of companies getting a competitive advantage because they know how to speak like a tax expert and a financial advisor, it really racks you up. Also, the question was raised about how much additional revenue the government would actually raise from putting in these particular measures. And, well, it was estimated that the current measure would raise approximately $200 million per annum. Let's just think about that for a second, and the kind of services, the kind of things that we could spend that money on, whether it's in health and in education, in housing. That money would go a great way. You could have 4 flag referendums for that price. No, you probably need a few more. Anyway, my point is, with $200 million extra in the government purse, I'm sure that it would do a lot for New Zealand and the kinds of changes that we could make in our communities. This is a great bill, Madam Speaker, albeit a little bit heavy on the jargon and a little bit specialised in terms of the kinds of advice that it offers. But if there's one bit of assurance that I can give out there to mums, to dads, to working class people that pay their tax and pay it diligently every year, and another piece of advice that I could give out there for small businesses, and when I gave my maiden speech, I actually stood here and I said that I would be a voice for small businesses. This particular bill is a good thing for us. It's going to even out the playing field. It's going to take away some of these very jargonistic, very highbrow ways of avoiding big companies having to pay their tax. And for that reason, Madam Speaker and members of the House, I commend this bill.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Taxation, Neutralising Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Taxation, Neutralising Base Erosion and Profit Sharing Bill be considered by the Finance and Expenditure Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Maritime Transport Amendment.